It's time to have your say because it's time for the Q&A. Welcome to Ask SCW, answering your questions in the wrestling community. You may be watching on YouTube, you may be listening on your favourite podcast platform. Thank you for choosing SCW. Lots of great topics to touch on today, including AEW, the exploding barbed wire death match that's going to be happening at Revolution. Of course, the biggest storyline in NXT right now with Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly, the explosion of the Undisputed Era. So much to go through today. If you are watching on the YouTube channel, then please subscribe right now. Leave any comments in the comments section. Please like and share the video as well. And if you're listening on your favourite podcast platform, then please hit the follow and you can keep up to date with each and every one of these series as and when they're released. If you want to get your question in on the next episode, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all covered on the screen right now on YouTube. I'll leave the description on the podcasting platform, and leave the hashtag AskSCW. I can give you a shout out in the next episode and can answer your question. Make sure to go and check out Wrestling Customs 24/7 as well, custom made championships for your figures, and got some great coasters as well. It's a great place to put your drink on, especially if you're watching the Elimination Chamber this evening, which I know I'll be definitely supplied with food and drinks, so definitely a good place to put your drink. Go and get a coaster from Wrestling Customs 24/7 right now. But let's get straight into our first question this week, and shout out to Noob and Co, as well as Dylan Ketchum, who combined are going to be involved with the first question here. Noob asking, what are your thoughts on the exploding barbed wire death match added to AEW Revolution? And Dylan Ketchum also asking, what's going to happen between Moxley and Omega at Revolution? Great questions, and I thought I'd tie them into one as it's kind of under one subject here. Now, of course, the exploding barbed wire death match, it really is one of the biggest talking points in wrestling this week. It certainly took me, and I think many people, by surprise. Not really common in the United States to have one of these style of matches. I know they've been very popular in Japanese wrestling, particularly in the 90s they were very popular, and of course one of the more infamous ones that I can remember watching was Cactus Jack and Terry Funk. I think it was back in the mid-90s. Do think it was even shown on ECW back in the day, but these matches are brutal, they should be bloody, they should be violent. I think that this is not for everyone, if I'm going to be brutally honest, but I think it is going to be a spectacle. That's what I will turn around and say for it. And my thoughts on it, I think they wanted to go that level up. They had their unsanctioned match, the Lights Out match, that was at Full Gear back in 2019, which now seems like a lifetime ago. But I think they wanted to go a level up from that, and it's not really many places you can go when you're going to do that. So this seems to be the fitting kind of stipulation you can put to this. And I think AEW are not quite like WWE at this point, in my opinion, where they have to worry about all the markets and the PGs and stuff like that. It's not on TNT either. So I think it will be okay from that point of view. And like I say, I think it's going to be quite bloody, it's going to be quite violent. And let's not forget here that Jon Moxley is soon going to be a father for the first time. I'm wondering if this is what they're going to do to write him off TV for the foreseeable future. Because Moxley, after this, he can take a break, he can become a dad. I mean, you look at, obviously that's what Seth Rollins sort of did, but of course instead of a exploding barbed wire death match, Seth Rollins just sacrificed himself at Survivor Series. Seems like it can be done a lot easier than the way you're doing it, Moxley, if this is the route you're going to go down. But I do look at it and say that I think that's what's going to happen. It will write Moxley off TV. He'll probably take a good couple of months off because he can take a break from it. It would seem logical after a match like this with a brutal, horrible, exploding finish probably, and then Moxley can come back in 2 to 3 months, perhaps have a different direction, a different motive when he comes back, maybe a fresh storyline. We'll have to wait and see how it will play out when things go further down the line. So that's what I think is going to happen. My thoughts on it is that, like I say, I think they wanted to take a level up. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I must admit, these are two very good workers. They have experience as well in this type of environment with companies like, CZW and companies like that. They have both been involved in this sort of hardcore style of wrestling before, so neither are strangers to it. So I think it's going to be good. That would be my take on it. If you wanted my opinion, I think it's going to be a spectacle. I don't think everyone's going to turn around and say, oh, it's going to be the 5-star classic, but this is something that people are going to remember, and I think that's what the lasting impression that AEW wants to do. They want to give you moments that you are going to remember, and this certainly, I think, is going to be one of them, one of the first of perhaps many in 2021. So it's got people talking, it's certainly got me invested. I'll be watching Revolution as and when it happens on March the 6th. Next question comes from Jobber Jibes Wrestling. Do you like more violent matches such as the exploding barbed wire, or do you feel like them kind of matches are too over the top? It's a good question, this one. As I said in the first question, these matches aren't for everybody. For myself personally, when I was a younger fan, perhaps 15, 20 years ago, the more violent, the better. I don't know, you kind of got this sort of buzz of seeing these things happen. But as you get kind of a bit, perhaps wiser, definitely, hopefully a bit wiser, definitely older, you start to look and see the risks involved with a lot of these matches. And I think for me, the stage I'm at now, it's not a story that needs to be told. It's not something that I turn around and say, I need this from professional wrestling. But I do like when we get violent spots, and I like them when they're done in the right dosages. And I do feel that a match like this hasn't been done in a very long time. And honestly, I trust the workers that are involved in the match. I think that sometimes can be a big part to play with it. So as for the fact we have Omega and Moxley in this environment, it's certainly not the Kenny Omega that you would have seen in New Japan. So it's certainly an exciting, different side of what you're seeing of Kenny Omega, especially like we said in the first question as well, with the unsanctioned and the lights out environment also. But yeah, I think with Moxley, like I say, these guys, they're no strangers to it in their careers. We just perhaps haven't seen so much of it with Moxley obviously being in the PG banner of WWE, and of course with Kenny Omega spending a lot of time in New Japan. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it should be good. These matches traditionally don't always pull me in, but I would say on this occasion, I am quite gripped. I'd like to know your thoughts in the comments below. We've got a number of questions coming next now based on the Undisputed Era, and we're going to kick off with Vigilante asking the future of the Undisputed Era. For me, it's finished, unfortunately. It looks like it's a slow burn breakup here. For sure, Adam Cole versus Kyle O'Reilly is potentially going to be one of the rivalries of the whole calendar year. This feels to me like NXT of what we're used to seeing. Now, I'm not saying NXT has been bad in any way, shape or form in recent months, but I would say it's been lacking something at the top of the card for me for a little while. And it's not anything to do with Finn Balor or anything like that. It's just that gripping storyline that we're used to seeing a Gargano Ciampa or, you know, like Finn Balor, Samoa Joe back in the days, you know, when we had that sort of top of the card where it was really an essential, integral storyline that gripped you in. You had to know piece by piece of how it's going to unravel. I think we're going to get that now with the Undisputed Era breakup. And I think particularly with Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly, I've enjoyed and loved it so far, and I cannot wait to see where it's going to go next. But as for the future of the group, unfortunately, I think we're going to be looking at the past as the Undisputed Era, and I think as the future, certainly not all of them are going to be together. Jamie, the controversial one, homes of our next question now. Whose side do you think Roderick Strong will take with Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly? I think he'll be on Adam Cole's side, as when Adam Cole superkicked Kyle O'Reilly, he stood over him, and while he looked conflicted, he didn't look concerned. Him teaming with Kyle O'Reilly and Finn Balor could be to trick us. Very good question, this one, and I happen to side with you. I think that he will be on Adam Cole's side. You have to just remember the start of NXT this week. He said, this is Adam Cole, this is what he does. He gets emotional, he gets heated, and he does things in the heat of the moment. It feels that Roderick Strong, at the moment, was almost willing to come to blows with Kyle O'Reilly throughout the show and argue on behalf of Adam Cole, rather than take Kyle O'Reilly's side. So although really things just seem in disarray right now, I think that it will be a clearer direction in the next sort of weeks to come, perhaps even months to come, as we go through this, you know, UE complete breakup. And I do think that Roderick Strong, if he's going to take the side, it will be on Adam Cole's side. I think Kyle O'Reilly, for sure, is definitely going to break away from the entire group and be a big single star in NXT. And I think, personally, I think the time is right to pull the trigger on Kyle O'Reilly. I really see he's become a point now where he can't be a second or third member in the group, a part of the tag team champions of the group. He is now ready to break out as a main event star, and to do that, we need the biggest matches possible. And as well, looking at it from Adam Cole's point of view, I do think Adam Cole was getting a bit stale as the babyface, and he hadn't been babyface for all that long. So that's quite an interesting take as well. He's had to go back to heel. We've already got this great dynamic, as I said in the last question, potential feud of the year, and just seeing as piece by piece is going to go, it's going to be pretty exciting. But for Roderick Strong, I agree with you. I think he signs up Adam Cole. Mike, Italian Habs Mike, the next question is now, and we've touched on Roderick Strong, but how does Bobby Fish play into this with the Undisputed Era? That's a very key question. If Adam Cole continues to push Balor, will the Demon show up at WrestleMania weekend? And when should Adam Cole speak on why he turned on Kyle O'Reilly? Let's touch on that last question first. I think that I love the idea this week that we thought we were getting answers, and yet we didn't really get anything. It was kind of really slowly done out, and we feel that this can now go on for weeks. I like the way that's done. I would even like if the way that NXT finished last week, the William Regal says that Adam Cole is not allowed in the building next week. I think that'd be pretty cool. And then he turns up and does something to Kyle O'Reilly again at the end of the show. I think it should be drawn out for a little bit. I don't see why we should learn everything so quickly. And if we're going to learn things, maybe one bit of information at a time. We can really drag this through to WrestleMania weekend. Like you said, perhaps it's going to be on the WrestleMania card. If there's a takeover, we'll have to wait and see. But I think that there's no rush to do it. What I would say is if it's not done in a couple of weeks, I would say that I think a portion of the audience would start to get impatient. So I think we need something soon. But I think one more week going by wouldn't necessarily hurt before we get some information from this. As for Bobby Fish, again, I see him remaining heel. I think the rumours were a long time ago that Kyle O'Reilly and Adam Cole were going to be baby faces and that Strong and Fish were going to be heels. I expect Fish and Strong to be heels. I expect them to be the tag team portion of the UE. If the UE remain a thing at all, I still have a feeling we could get a big breakup, and something that's not involved in any question, which I'm going to mention right now. Pat McAfee was gloating on an aeroplane saying how, he knew this all along and that, how people didn't see things from his point of view. Wouldn't it be funny if they aligned at some point? Just an idea. I don't know. Maybe the McAfee brand doesn't need Adam Cole, Pete Dunne, Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch as a group, but certainly I think that would be a major twist if that was to go down, but I'm not going to predict that to go on, just something that popped in my brain. But I think the Bobby Fish in either way turns heel. And as for Demon Finn Balor, unfortunately, I just don't see the Demon coming back anytime soon. I do think we should get him at some point, and I would like to see it, but this Balor character has not been the Demon for a long, long time. I think the last time we saw the Demon, I want to say, was at a SummerSlam like 3 years ago. I want to say that. Wasn't it the feud with Baron Corbin at the time, and he won in a couple of minutes? We've only seen that Demon character about 3 or 4 times in the last few years since he went up to Raw. So just goes to show how rare it is that we see it. Would fans like to see the Demon come back? Certainly. Myself included, definitely. Actually, I do believe we got the Demon Finn Balor last time actually against AJ Styles, actually. I think it was at TLC 2017. So I stand corrected, I think, of when the last time that happened. But looking at it either way, I do feel that it would be great to see it back. I just don't see it coming back anytime soon, sadly. But maybe if he's pushed too far, maybe it will go down. Maybe it would be a great WrestleMania moment. I certainly would love to see it anyway. But yeah, I don't see it happening, unfortunately. Back to Dylan Ketchum now and asking a triple threat match. Cole versus Balor versus O'Reilly for the NXT Championship? It certainly could happen, couldn't it? It feels now that Finn Balor and Karrion Kross, that storyline seems to have dissolved, or the direction of what we thought we were going to get, it seems to have gone. Unless we're going to get Balor and Kross eventually, maybe Adam Cole gets the championship opportunity on, say, March 3rd, some sort of middle ground between the takeovers. That's always a potential that could happen. But yeah, I would be down to see this triple threat match. This certainly would be the direction I would actually be currently more in favour of going right now in NXT. So I hope it happens. I really, really do. And maybe from that we can break away if Balor keeps the championship, or if even O'Reilly wins the championship. Maybe him and Cole ends up with a rivalry singles feud for the NXT championship. I certainly would be down for that as well. Either way, whatever happens, I'm loving the way that it's being put together. I love the way it's being built. And yeah, let's see how it's going to play out. If it's a triple threat match for the NXT Championship, sign me up. I'll be there front row and centre with my popcorn, enjoying it just the same way as MSK did this past week on NXT. Next question coming from Scott Robertson. How would you book the Adam Cole-Kyle O'Reilly feud? Well, as I've gone sort of saying bits and pieces in the last couple of questions, I actually think NXT are doing such a great job of it that I love the fact that this is a slow burning rivalry. I like the fact that the breakup is, we're getting moments of impact where it's all very sudden. It feels like we know the next day of the story, but we don't really, because Adam Cole hasn't said anything yet. And I like the fact that that's playing out. Like I said, if it was up to me this week, I think Adam Cole would be barred from the building. I wouldn't let him in to the Capitol Wrestling Center. Fans, yeah, for us at home would be like, oh, he's not going to be there. We're not going to get any storyline development this week. But maybe Kyle O'Reilly is involved in the main event. Maybe something to do with Finn Balor as well, because I'm sure there's going to be unrest there also. And then Adam Cole comes in, attacks one or both at the end of the show, again, should signifying he wants to be the NXT champion. Maybe Kyle O'Reilly is written up TV himself this week. Maybe Adam Cole does get the opportunity to actually come now and just speak. Maybe the focus will be Adam Cole and Finn Balor for the next couple of weeks. I really like what the suggestion was in the last question of the triple threat match for the NXT Championship. If it was me booking it, that would actually happen at WrestleMania on one of the nights. I would actually say that it's a great way to plug the NXT Championship. You're getting it to every audience possible. That's the way you'll get people to want to come and tune in on Wednesday evenings on the USA Network. For people that are not watching NXT, you get this killer triple threat match between these three guys. I think people would say, yeah, I'm going to go and check out NXT. So that would be something I would do. And then I would continue the rivalry of Kyle O'Reilly, Adam Cole, make it like a Ciampa Gargano feud, that style where it's gone on multiple takeovers as this sort of blood feud where each time the level just goes up. We have like a singles match, which will be an epic sort of 30-minute classic. Then we'll get the toys involved, where it's a street fight or however you want to do. And maybe even like the 3 stages that we got, 3 stages of hell that with Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano a couple of years ago. Maybe we can do that at a takeover as well to really finish things off. We can use the other Undisputed Era guys as well, potentially there to play the sides. As I say, I think both of them will be on the heel side, but maybe Adam Cole will lose patience with these guys as time goes on as well, because if they're not getting the job done for him on Kyle O'Reilly, maybe he'll say, look, I'm better off doing this on my own, and maybe he'll turn on all of them and we see everybody go their separate ways. One thing is for sure that I don't think a lot of people have kind of wondered at the moment is why the breakup could be happening, and certainly one thing could be Raw and SmackDown like to take superstars from NXT. I wonder, some of them have said they want to stay in NXT, perhaps don't see the benefit of going to Raw and SmackDown. Part of me has this little thing inside me, wonders if maybe there's a position that's opening up from Adam Cole on one of these 2 brands later in the year, and maybe we might just see him on Raw SmackDown at some stage. But yeah, I think that's how I book it. That's how I'd have it go down. I think ultimately at the end of this, Kyle O'Reilly needs to be built as the megastar, the main eventer, and then he can go for the NXT Championship if he's not already, and win it there and then, and be the face of NXT. I certainly think that would be ultimately the end game of where this should lead to. But interested in your thoughts of this one as well. Next question coming from DWE, Dan the Man Williams. Do you think WWE should put the NXT title on WrestleMania and a #1 contenders for the TakeOver, or do you think the NXT title match should stay on TakeOver? If there's a TakeOver, it should be on TakeOver. But the thing is, with WrestleMania being 2 nights, and obviously with how things worked out last year, we didn't get a TakeOver on WrestleMania weekend, with SmackDown being on Friday. Where's the space for an NXT takeover? I'm not sure I'm going to see where a takeover could be. So for me, if that's the case, I would put the NXT Championship on WrestleMania, as I said in the last question. If it was me again, I would have it as the triple threat match there. I think that would be a great way to go down. And I think it would be a great showcase match to do. If it was me for WrestleMania, I'd have the NXT Championship and the NXT Women's Championship on the line. And remember, the women's match was on the card last year. Of course, it was Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair. And I'd have one of those title matches on 1 night each, because in that way you have 2 nights of showcasing NXT in 1 match, and I think if you put 2 killer matches on, I think it's enough to invest people to go and watch NXT on Wednesday. So that's how I would do it. I think yes, it should happen, but if there is a takeover, then yeah, I think they should stick to the takeover, because NXT, although WrestleMania is the biggest show of the year, NXT is NXT, so you should always keep to the values of what NXT has. But if there is no takeover, let's whack it on WrestleMania, biggest stage of them all, and I know that whoever they put in the match, it will be a show stealer potentially on the card. Just a quick shout as well, just before we go to the next question, to make sure to check out SCW Interviews. DWE was the guest this week, and we were talking all things wrestling YouTube, Elimination Chamber, NXT in general, a lot of NXT topics as well involving the Undisputed Era. So if you want to know Dan's thoughts on that as well as mine continuing in that video, go and check that out at the end of this video. Next question, going back to Scott Robertson now. How do you feel about pay-per-views between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania? Really good question, this one. I really like this. I like to have 1 between. I don't like having 2. And in recent years, we're getting 2 between now and WrestleMania, because WrestleMania now is at the start of April. I think traditionally it used to be at the end of March. I'm a fan of the Elimination Chamber, and of course the Elimination Chamber is tonight at the time of recording, and I like that position. I like the fact that usually you can make your WrestleMania card based on the Elimination Chamber. As for Fastlane, I don't see the point in it. I never have seen the point of it. I understand that it's the road to WrestleMania, and if you're on the road, you want to get in the fast lane. It feels like you're getting to WrestleMania quick, so I get the point of it. But the name for me is just awful. I'm not a fan of the name. I prefer a different pay-per-view name. But also, I think it becomes a point where the Royal Rumble to WrestleMania, it's nice to see stories play out on weekly TV. To have a number of pay-per-views, it's like someone's won a Royal Rumble match, and yet then all of a sudden they've got to wait 2 pay-per-views to find out who they're going to face. It just becomes messy. Like, Edge is supposed to make his decision tonight based on who he's going to face at WrestleMania, but yet there's another pay-per-view. So are you going to have that pay-per-view, for example, with Roman Reigns not defending the championship, or has Edge got to wait another 3 weeks or so to make that decision? It becomes a bit too much. It's quantity over quality. I think one pay-per-view is enough, and I'm sure there are many people out there who say there shouldn't be a pay-per-view at all between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. But if it was me, I was a fan of back in the old days when it was No Way Out, Elimination Chamber. Those ones are fine, but for me, with Fastlane, I just don't see the point, and I'm not a fan of the pay-per-view name, the concept. I don't even see many memorable Fastlane moments anyway, unless you want to count Goldberg destroying Kevin Owens in 21 seconds, which for me is something I try to choose to forget as well. So I'm sure there were some great matches and great moments from past of Fastlane, but for me, I think it's just one pay-per-view too many. For me, I would prefer they just stick to just the Elimination Chamber. Next question now comes from a straight edge Josh. I think Chad Gable gives me modern day Charlie Haas vibes. What do you reckon? I love that you've put this question, and you could not have timed this on a better week. I was very fortunate to be a special guest on the Sweet Chinwag podcast, which is actually going to be released tomorrow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you'd like to listen to your podcast. I'm a guest on that show. I'm very fortunate. Thank you to them for having me on. And we were talking about Chad Gable, and I actually said that they said he was not a Kurt Angle, the way he's presented to look like one, but not. And I actually said he reminds me of the world's greatest tag team. He actually reminds me of Charlie Haas. And so I 100% agree with you, and I just think the timing of this question could not have been more perfect. Yeah, I mean, Chad Gable, he is the guy that, you know, is a great in-wrestler. He is awesome at what he does in the ring. Charlie Haas was a great in-ring wrestler. And Gable has good character as well. He has a better character and personality, arguably, for WWE, I think, than Charlie Haas did. But I just feel like they're never going to push Chad Gable. And again, he's going to be always in that same place of the card as Charlie Haas was. That great in-ring worker, but not given the chance to shine the way he could or perhaps should in the company. Charlie Haas is someone that should have been at least a mid-card champion, perhaps even someone pushing towards that main event area, along with Shelton Benjamin, along with Kurt Angle. Why we never got the Team Angle triple threat match, you know, explosion between these guys, I will never know, and seeing all these guys push towards the top of the card. But I mean, with Chad Gable, yeah, I get similar vibes. I see that he's going to be like Charlie Haas for his entire WWE career. He's going to be that someone that will probably be involved in the tag team scene for a lot of the time, probably someone that have some great matches here and there, but unfortunately someone that's never going to be pushed and taken seriously enough to where he can be going for, you know, the mid-card championships or even the world championships. So sorry to say it to Chad Gable, but I do agree. I see those Charlie Haas vibes. Next, we've got Lorenzo Carrillo with a host of questions for us now. Could we see a new emergence of a new and improved Apollo Crews? Really liking that question. Will Toni Storm be the next NXT Women's Champion? When will Daniel Bryan face Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship? And do we think SmackDown is much more of a serious environment than Raw right now? 4 fantastic questions there. Let's start with Apollo Crews, and I love what they've done with Apollo Crews there. It was amazing on SmackDown this week because the heel turn's been brewing. It's kind of been there. We've kind of known it for a while now, and it was just finding that magic moment to really pull the trigger. And I wondered if it was going to be in amongst with Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman. I thought maybe they would connect that back at some point, but that seemed to be quietly dropped for a time being ago. Whether they'll revisit it, I'd quite like them to. I think it would be quite good. I think Apollo Crews could quite offer a lot to what has this Roman Reigns kind of stable going on at the minute. But from what we saw on SmackDown this week with the attack on Big E, he's had enough. And to be fair, he has a point. He's not going to be stuck in catering anymore. He doesn't want to be that guy, and he doesn't want to be held back. He feels like he's been held back all the time. And what does a superstar do when they feel like they're held back? They break out. And the fact that he feels that Big E will no longer give him an opportunity for something he feels he's destined to have, not only did he want to attack Shinsuke Nakamura, he took out Big E. And the fact is, did he take it too far on SmackDown? Yes, he did. But you know what? Did he make an impact, and did he get people's attention? He certainly did by dropping them steel stairs. Look, we know it never really landed on Big E, but that angle, the way it's been put together, was absolutely fantastic, because all of a sudden now I really want to see a Big E Apollo Crews match. I'd even be happy for it at WrestleMania. This is how much it has just pushed the credibility of Apollo Crews up overnight. He's got character, he's got integrity, he's got stuff there. You just think to yourself like, yeah, I can believe in this guy. He's got something there right now, which I didn't see for a long time. Even during his babyface run last year as United States champion, I felt was a bit squeaky clean. I never really bought into it enough. This Apollo Crews, I really buy into. So yeah, I was a massive fan of it, and I think we could get a very new and improved Apollo Crews going forward. As for Toni Storm, I would love to see it. If you had my choice, Toni Storm would be the next NXT Women's Champion. Will it happen? I'm not entirely sure, but I will say that I did believe when I was doing the NXT predictions not long ago that Raquel Gonzalez, in a lot of people's eyes, was the opponent for WrestleMania weekend. I thought it was a potential that could go down as well, but now she's won this classic, the Dusty Cup. I think the Women's Tag Team Championships are in her future. I think the NXT Women's Championship is in her future further down the line. I don't think it's going to be as immediate as people think. I think her stock is growing, it's getting really high, and I think that it will continue that way. I think Raquel Gonzalez is in for an amazing 2021, but I think she's going to be appearing more on Raw and SmackDown along with NXT rather than just being NXT Women's Champion. So in the meantime, it leaves a gap open, and Toni Storm, for me, is the right person to take that championship from Io Shirai. I would like to see this to be a long-term rivalry as well. Perhaps Toni Storm wins the championship, and maybe Io fights to win it back, and at some point further down the line, then Raquel wins that championship later on in the year. But looking at it, can Toni Storm do it? Yes. Would I like her to do it? Yes. Will she do it? There's where the doubt creeps in. As for Daniel Bryan versus Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship, I don't know at this point. I mean, I know Daniel Bryan is going to go to a part-time schedule in the very near future. So unless he wins the Chamber match tonight and it builds to something there, that's where I think it will happen. But if it doesn't happen there, I'm not so sure when it happens. Maybe it happens the pay-per-view after WrestleMania, because it feels now for sure that we've got Edge versus Roman at WrestleMania. That feels to be the clear direction. So I'm not sure where Daniel Bryan fits in unless he wins the Elimination Chamber this evening. As for SmackDown being taken more serious than Raw right now, yes, 100% yes. SmackDown has the perfect blend, and it's a perfect length of a show as well, which of course we know Raw, it's not new. Every YouTuber, podcast probably says the same about Monday Night Raw, but when you look at SmackDown, you look at its roster, it has the great timing for matches, it has the great it has great storylines running throughout the show, which you don't really get on Raw. You have these long 15-20 minute matches without anything really happening. It's just a match story that plays out in ring, and then maybe someone wins and loses, and that's it. Whereas SmackDown, you get these 4, 5 to 10 minute matches, and there's a bit of storyline development, great characteristics, great characters, and with great characters leads to great storylines, because those characters can easily have a storyline that's linked to them. Sami Zayn is a perfect example right now with the conspiracy theories, with the camera crew following him around. He's someone that, you know, looks good in defeat and puts other people over. And, you know, he's been such a whiny character in general. Get a few losses together, not has his championship opportunity rematch that he wanted for a one-on-one against Big E. He thinks there's a conspiracy against him, and now he's been put in all these scenarios. Number 3 in the Royal Rumble. I think he'll be the first one to compete in the Chamber tonight with people in the pods and him in the ring. So he's got a legitimate gripe, and I think those little details make a great show. Billie Kay, it's all about the character. I mean, sometimes we want to see 5-star classic matches, yes, and I would love to see 5-star classic matches every time I watch. But sometimes it's more important on storyline and character development. On a SmackDown, it has the perfect blend of great in-ring action along with those two things, where Raw, for me, has good in-ring work, has great in-ring work, but a lot of the time it lacks the storylines, and sometimes I don't think we get as much character work out of some of the people that we could. Yes, with Alexa Bliss, The Fiend, Randy Orton, we've got the character work there in certain superstars like that. Drew is a fantastic babyface champion. He's probably the most credited one I can remember in a long, long time, especially for longevity as well. But with a number of superstars, you could just turn around and say they're all just, you know, legitimate badasses that just fight each other. I don't see a character or something that leads to a fun story. And I think as well with those SmackDown stories, I mentioned Sami Zayn gives that nice bit of light comedy as well, where I think Raw with riddle. It's forced comedy, and it's not really fun to watch. So yeah, for me, SmackDown right now is the far more serious show of the two. It's taken with more credibility, and ironically enough, both Royal Rumble winners are hanging around on SmackDown as well. So SmackDown should have people's attention more than Raw, but I do wish that Raw would take from what they see from SmackDown and put it into Monday nights, because they certainly can make Raw the A show if they work hard on it. Yes, 3 hours is hard to fill, and sometimes with Raw and SmackDown, it is quantity over quality, but they can do it for SmackDown. If they could do great shows like that for SmackDown, Lord knows why they can't do it for Raw. Back to Noob and Co now for some more questions now. I'm going to start off. Do you think that Asuka's bad booking sparked fan outrage for the past 3 years? How will WWE be able to fix it? And who was really challenged for the women's tag team titles? Well, for the women's tag team titles, can say that one very, very quickly. Of course, we have a match this evening: Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler against Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. I put a little prediction on YouTube yesterday. I do think that Jax and Baszler will retain those championships here. I do think they go on to NXT to take on Raquel Gonzalez and Dakota Kai. They may even face Naomi and Lana in the meantime. Before that, I think your next champions will be Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez. Will be a great exposure to get them on Raw and SmackDown as well as NXT, and then we can have a flourishing women's tag team division with 3 or 4 tag teams, or certainly 3 or 4 tag teams in NXT, a couple of tag teams on Raw and SmackDown. The match is going to feel quite fresh and it's going to feel quite good. So I've got high hopes currently for the Women's Tag Team Championships. I'm actually liking the direction for the first time in a long time, particularly if it plays out the way I think it's going to play out. As for Asuka, very key question, this one. Fan outrage, I think there is some of it, perhaps with some sort of elements if you look on social media, but I don't think it's overall. I think the thing is with Asuka, you're right. Asuka has been mistreated a lot over the last 3 years, and just when you think Asuka's getting the momentum back, I don't know what happens, but something seems to not quite go right with Asuka. And I mean, you look last year during the pandemic, let's not go all the way back to NXT, but let's go in the last 12 months. She was the character and the person at times that was holding these shows together. You know, she was a bit weird and wacky, but it worked because we had empty arenas. We'd never been around that environment before. Asuka did something different, and it stood out. And WWE took notice, and so did we. And WWE were right to have Asuka win the Raw Women's Championship, or the Money in the Bank to win that championship. And then she had a great run at the start, but then we had the summer of Bayley and Banks, which at the time I said was quite damaging because they had all the belts, and I understand that's kind of good for a storyline purpose, but it was at the expense of Asuka at the time, which didn't really help. And Asuka has suffered that so many times throughout her WWE career, and I think it's those defeats that what I think causes the fan outrage. Now, when we do go backwards, you know, Asuka losing to Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 34 when she should have won that match, that was not needed on that particular time. The fact that then she went to lose to Carmella, I think not so long afterwards as well, which wasn't the right sort of time. Asuka was this unstoppable force in NXT and yet couldn't defeat Carmella on the main roster. She then was the SmackDown Women's Champion after finding the momentum, get to WrestleMania 35. She's not only not the SmackDown Women's Champion, I don't think she's even on WrestleMania anymore because Charlotte wins the belt a couple of weeks before to make the Becky 2 belt scenario. We then got to the expense of Banks and Bayley, and then she wins the belt back, but for some reason it's not the focus anymore on the Raw Women's division. The focus was on Bayley and Banks, who went back to SmackDown and were no longer featured on Raw and SmackDown. And it feels the last few months that Asuka, unfortunately, although the Women's Champion, just hasn't been booked right. And of course, it's not anything to do with Asuka. Asuka is fantastic when she's on screen. Character work is fine. The in-ring work is always superb. She's one of the best women wrestlers in the world. I don't think anyone can argue that scenario. But the thing is that the creative, just the people with the pencils, the people that make the decisions, aren't putting the attention and focus in the right place. Asuka now, the last couple of months as Raw Women's Champion, instead of defending that championship, has been focused on the women's tag titles again. And it's like, well, this was done for Charlotte Flair, not for Asuka. And I think that is where a lot of that fan rage happens, that Asuka, although she's in and around stuff, things not being booked with her benefit in mind. And I think that that's what causes a lot of upset. The way to fix it is to make sure that Asuka is booked in meaningful programs, meaningful storylines, even if she's not the champion. And I mean, to be fair, wins always help. I think that's the thing. If you can see storyline progression, that always helps. And I think when you look at things for Charlotte Flair, I think a lot of people would turn around and say that in Charlotte Flair is the biggest match you can put for WrestleMania. I think some people would say we've seen it quite many times before, but the way to do it is for Asuka to win that WrestleMania match, get that WrestleMania moment back. And as I suggested in another video, if you're going to do Asuka and Charlotte, make it the final hurrah. They've had a lot of matches. Let's have a loser leave for Raw. Let's have a trade go down afterwards, because although I like Bayley's Hello Ding Dong on SmackDown. I do think that Bayley would be better suited on Raw, and I think Charlotte would be better suited on SmackDown, particularly if Sasha Banks is starting to look like she's turning heel as well. Charlotte currently babyface, could feel the babyface side of things along with Bianca Belair, and they can have, the mix of matches they have on SmackDown. Asuka can have a great program with Bayley on Raw, because although we've seen many matches with them, they've never had a real program where they could really put something, build something together, and I think that would give a lot of momentum there for it. But with Asuka, like I say, it all comes down to how you book things and how you do it, because I even suggested if Asuka was to lose the championship at this point right now, I think a great storyline for her going to WrestleMania would be, I'm not being stepped over, I'm not having someone take my place, I'm not being ignored for another WrestleMania. I'm getting my moment, I'm getting my win. That would be a great, fascinating storyline to watch play out, and I'd love to see it. It's all about finding the momentum, finding the right pieces, and really, the blame doesn't come to Asuka, and I think for a lot of people, the blame all solely goes on creative. And if they can be creative for Asuka, it's a bright future ahead for her. Two more questions from Noob and Co. Asking, what are your thoughts on the first tournament matches on the Japanese side of the AEW Women's Tournament? And do you think that Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez will be on the main roster before WrestleMania 37? Well, we've already spoke about Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez, but of course this is a different question here. I think in terms of being on Raw and SmackDown as Women's Tag Team Champions, yes. Permanently, no. But the thing is, though, what I like about the idea of them being able to be on as NXT roster members but women's tag team champions is that they can go to Raw and SmackDown, they can be exposed to a wider audience, people can get gauge of whether they're impressed with them or not, or into their segments, and if things go well when they lose the championships, they can go to Raw or SmackDown. I think that's a great way to do it, because it's almost like it's a proving ground. It's testing the waters rather than just turning around and saying, here, you're on Raw or SmackDown, and we're going to push you for about 3 months, and then you're stuck in catering after that, which has happened with so many unfortunate other NXT call-ups in the past, or being stuck on main event as well, which is pretty much the same thing these days. But looking at it, I think that would be a great way to do it. So would it be there full-time? I hope not, and I would expect not, but could it be featuring on Raw or SmackDown? If they win those belts, I'm going to go for yes. As for the AEW Japanese section of the tournament, I must admit I didn't watch the YouTube show, but I did see the clips that were on AEW Dynamite. I think that they've got some impressive female talents. I have seen some of their work before, particularly the ones that have appeared in AEW before. I think it's an exciting portion of the tournament. I like the way it's been put together. What I would say is, though, I don't like the production. And of course, look, you can't do much about it. We're in a current situation, the pandemic, perhaps in a different time, different place, everyone would have been flown over to the States and would have done all of this as maybe a one-night tournament or on Dynamite, or how it would have been done. But what I do say is that for the YouTube show, I think that it does show poor production quality, and unfortunately for people that, are on the fence of AEW, I think production quality does go a long way, and yeah, it didn't make me want to go and watch the whole thing, if that makes sense. But I know that the workers are very good, so for that, you're getting some good matches. But I think that it was its detriment to it was the production side of things. But I will keep an eye on things that's going on, and particularly I've seen as well the actually American bracket as well is going into YouTube as well. It's a shame, because I'm going to just make a quick shout on this. Really, it's not really involved with the question, but want to give my point of view with it. Is that we need more women's action on Dynamite. We get one match each week. I think we should have two, personally. I think it's a 2-hour show, one match each hour. I don't see where the thing is, especially with this tournament right now. You want to be showcasing all this talent as much as possible. Why throwing so much of it on YouTube? It doesn't, for me, it doesn't send the right message. I know it's not an intentional message that's being sent out from AEW, but for me, I just think it does send the wrong message, because women's wrestling, I think is probably the most refreshing thing in wrestling today. In fact, I think it's sometimes a lot more interesting than what's going on in the men's, because the men's stuff has been going on for years and years and years with the same storylines. With the women, it's only sort of like in the last sort of 5 or so years where it's been pushed to the forefront so well. We've had moments. Trish and Lita main eventing Raw, and in the Attitude Era of China, and all the rest of it. But it's this at the point is where women's wrestling is at its best and taken most seriously. And you look at things, and I want to see more of it on AEW Dynamite, because AEW is such a great show. I just think that in certain areas it does lack, and I think they should have had, especially the American side of this tournament, because everyone's in America, they should have had all of that on Dynamite, not any of that on YouTube, in my opinion. If they wanted to do things, then perhaps maybe they should have done, if with the Japanese side, they should have done the semi-finals and final on the next show, so we knew it was the final on that side, then they can perhaps come to Dynamite and quarantine, because I believe the final of that tournament is going to be on the March 3rd Dynamite, and then the winner will face Hikaru Shida at Revolution. But I could be wrong with that one. But yeah, that's how I would have done it anyway. But personally, for me, some great in-ring wrestlers. I'm looking forward to see how the tournament's going to play out. But no, I didn't watch in full that on YouTube, no. Mark Q, World Order. Our next question now. What did you think of the new Impact Wrestling show before this week's Impact? Assuming that you've seen any, is aware you're not in the US. No, I'm not in the US, unfortunately. No, I haven't seen it, so I can't really give too much judgment, unfortunately. But I've seen the Hard to Kill kickoff and as well Bound for Glory. I'm aware that they're quite good at promoting stuff that's going to be coming up on the upcoming shows, so I'm pretty sure this show is pretty decent with Josh Matthews on there as well. I imagine that that probably is a better place for him. I do prefer Josh Matthews on Impact when it was doing the backstage stuff, when he was presenting what was coming on later in the show rather than actually the commentary itself. So I think the people they've probably got on this probably works really, really well. I think will be better suited, and it's great to, you know, pluck what's coming up, get people hyped up for the show that's about to start, perhaps have exclusive things like interviews, maybe even a match, I don't know. But yeah, for me, I think that this could work really, really well, but unfortunately, I can't pass too much judgment on it because no, you're right, I haven't been able to see it as of yet. Last question this week does come from Vigilante. If WWE is planning Edge versus Reigns, how would you book it? Because the winner of the Elimination Chamber also gets a title shot at WrestleMania. Well, I have some good news for that, actually, because the Elimination Chamber is this evening, and actually the stipulation is the winner of that Elimination Chamber match actually will face the champion Roman Reigns on the same night. So that match is actually going down tonight, so we're not going to wait long for that. So it does leave a clear path for Edge to choose who he wants to face at WrestleMania. I do believe it's clear at this point it will be Edge against Roman Reigns. Spear versus Spear, the comeback story, I think needs to be put into this of how it's going to be booked. The fact that Edge, you know, says he can finish his career now on his own terms. It's 10 years since he won the World Heavyweight Championship. I think that that needs to be brought into this. The fact you've got Jey Uso that's going to be helping Roman Reigns throughout this. Perhaps Christian will come back. He's expected to do some part-time stuff. Maybe Roman Reigns versus Christian could happen at Fastlane. That'd be pretty fun to see as well, and see Christian taken out of this equation as well. Perhaps even ENC against Jey Uso and Roman Reigns would be a fun match at Fastlane. There's certainly endless possibilities of what we could get with that. But I also like the idea that I've seen a few people pass around, the idea of the World Heavyweight Championship being brought back instead of the Universal Championship. That certainly feels like a great idea that I'd like to see, because Edge, he never lost that championship, and the big gold belt, let's be fair, I think many people would prefer to see that to the Universal Championship. So those are the things that I would do if I was going to book it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how it's going to play out. I'm also looking forward to seeing who's going to win the Chamber this evening. But that's all from Ask SCW this week. And of course, the Elimination Chamber prediction show is still available on SCW right now. If you're watching this before Elimination Chamber this evening, go and check that out. SCW Interviews also is on the channel right now, as I say, is with Dan Man Williams as well. Go and check out Non-Stop Wrestling Chat as well. I was involved on that channel with an interview this week, so that actually went live on Friday on YouTube. Go and check out their YouTube channel. I shall actually leave a link in the description as well for you, and also the Sweet Chinwag podcast as well. I will be involved on that, and that's released tomorrow on Monday on all your favourite podcast platforms, so make sure to go and check them out. But that's all from me. Thank you for watching, and hope you've enjoyed Ask SCW as always. The Elimination Chamber review show will be dropping on this channel tomorrow. But that's all from me. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time.